Saturday. Concern grows among the downtown merchants, shocked by the sudden outburst of violence. Jim Myers, whose pharmacy was also damaged, recalls the mood that day.
I think it was anger. It was focused at the students who had caused it. And I think there was enough rumors floating around that, quote, students were going to come back and finish the job.
Sightings of out-of-state student militants entering Kent are also reported to the mayor's office, further fueling fears and paranoia. Under pressure from constituents and feeling his local police force ill-equipped to deal with the potential unrest, Satrum makes a request for National Guard assistance in Kent.
Some kind of law enforcement help was needed. I guess the logical choices would have been the Ohio State Patrol and the Ohio National Guard. In this case, it turned out to be the Guard that got here first. We were grateful when they arrived.
Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC, was a military science program present on university campuses across the country, including Kent State. Its presence had been a target of anti-war protest for years, and that evening it became a target again. That night, a demonstration of 300 students begins to march around the campus, slowly growing to a crowd of 2,000. As the sun sets and darkness envelops the campus, they descend upon the ROTC building and proceed to set it on fire.
At first, they threw some flares on the roof, traffic kind of safety flares, and rolled off and fell back onto the ground.
And so the students broke out the windows, they began to set some small fires on the curtains, and the building began to burn on one corner, just slightly.
I think the call came around 8:45, somewhere in that area. And so we headed for the ROTC building. And something stuck in my mind, and I'll never forget it. My father-in-law said, you know, this does not look good.
But then the students took the hoses from the firemen, jumped on the firemen, cut the hoses with some knives.
That was their mission, prevent us from doing our job, because they were making a statement with burning the building.
The firemen give up and leave the scene. Campus security arrives and disperses the crowd.
And as we left the area, we looked back and we saw that the fire was out.
The building just wasn't much damaged.
And we walked around the campus and eventually went back to the ROTC building area. And lo and behold, when we got back there, the building was fully involved in flames.
I heard the fire trucks coming in, and the second time, and I just turned around, and I'll never forget this picture. There were soldiers riding on the fire trucks.
Just as President Nixon invaded Cambodia with U.S. troops, the National Guard then invaded the Kent State campus.
As flames illuminate the Kent State campus, National Guard troops who have been mediating a volatile truckers' strike are called in to escort the firefighters back to the campus. Among them are Kent State student Robert Bosser, Sergeant Rudy Morris, and Sergeant Larry Schaefer.
Not real sure. I think it was somewhere right around 8 o'clock in the evening we got the call to go to Kent.
It was dark when we drove into Kent, and we were aware of the fact that there were demonstrations going on over there, and there was, if you will, civil unrest.
And I recall rounding the bend because they said there's some fires, and it looked like the whole damn city was aglow with an orange flame, and I thought they're burning the city down.
As we drove by the front campus area, we were greeted by a crowd of very boisterous, very loud, group of students, and many of them were pelting rocks and a variety of other projectiles in our direction.
The guard stands watch as firefighters work to extinguish the blaze amidst the cheers of students. Guardsmen are then ordered to disperse the crowd.
It was dark, it was noisy. We didn't know exactly what all was going on, so we were simply trying to accomplish the goal of restoring a little bit of order that night.
I don't think the term martial law was used, but it was evident that there was a curfew being imposed, and that if you were outside of the dorm, you were subject to arrest. We just didn't know what that meant and how that was going to affect us. And but at that time it was 11, 12 o'clock at night, so we retired for the evening. We were in the dorms, and we figured we'd deal with it the next day.
Sunday, students examine the new landscape of their campus.
I'll never forget the feeling I had when I looked out my dormitory window onto the football field and I saw about 150 pup tents, jeeps, like little tanks going up and down the road and in and out of the stadium. There was a military takeover of our campus.
It was a real paradox, the military vehicles and like an almost party atmosphere. People, hey, how you doing, waving to you. Remember stopping at a corner, we were just told, just ride the streets, just go anywhere around, just be seen.
For Barry Levine and his companion, fellow student Allison Krause, the day provides a strange yet poignant encounter.
We were walking around the campus, and there was one particular guardsman that a number of students had gathered around and were talking to. And he happened to have a flower in his gun barrel. And as we watched the students talking to him, Alice and I also saw an officer standing not too far away. And he was not too happy about what was going on. You could see it in his face. And so he eventually approached the guardsman. He reached around Myers and grabbed the flower, took it out. And as he took it out, Allison grabbed it from him and said, "What's the matter with flowers? Flowers are better than bullets."
Unfortunately, the relaxed atmosphere would not last long.
Enter at that time Governor James A. Rhodes, who was involved in a U.S. primary fight for the Senate with one of Ohio's most famous political families, Taft. Governor Rhodes knew that the popular theme among Americans at that time was law and order.
We're seen here at the city of Kent, especially, probably the most vicious form of campus-oriented violence yet perpetrated by dissident groups. They make definite plans of burning, destroying, and throwing rocks at police and at the National Guard and the Highway Patrol. This is when we're going to use every part of the law enforcement agency of Ohio to drive them out of Kent. We are going to eradicate the problem. We're not going to treat the symptoms.
And these people just move from one campus to the other and terrorize the community. They're worse than the brown shirt and the communist element and also the night riders and the vigilantes. They're the worst type of people that we harbor in America. And I want to say that they're not going to take over a campus.
General Del Corso, how long do you expect to keep the Guard in Kent?
Well, I'll answer that till we get rid of them. I don't want to take any authority away from the General, but I want to cut it short.
You got me outranked, Governor, anyway.
Instead of coming into the campus and being a calming influence, he came in and he threw fuel on the fire. He made the situation worse.
Many guardsmen said that they took Rhodes' statement, "We're going to use every force necessary," to be equivalent to martial law, that they could do whatever they needed to do to preserve law and order.
I didn't hear that speech at all. I didn't hear any parts of that speech either. At the time, again, I didn't hear them. So for them to be inflammatory to me in any way, no, that would not be so.
In an attempt to clear up confusion over the status of organized student protest, university officials distribute 12,000 leaflets banning any and all demonstrations. Due to poor methods of distribution, however, many students never see the leaflet. Among those returning to Kent that day is Dean Kaler, a freshman with dreams of playing football for Kent State.
When we got there, my dad goes, "Oh my God, this is an occupation. This looks like Korea."
That evening, a group begins to congregate on the Commons. Fearing the crowd would make their way back to downtown Kent, the Guard intercepts them on the corner of Main and Lincoln. There, a sit-in takes place. Students renew demands to speak with University President White about the Guard's presence on campus. Students are told that if they move off the street and back onto the campus, the president would then come out and speak with them.
And of course they tricked us. We got out of the streets, moved onto front campus, and the National Guardsmen advanced on us with tear gas and bayonets.
That's when we had people that were just screaming, giving us the finger, flipping us the bird, screaming at us, yelling four-letter words. And I'm sitting there saying, what seems to be the problem here?
Again, there was a lot of chanting and rock throwing and what have you when that took place.
As the situation intensifies between students and guardsmen, so too does the military presence on campus.
The scariest thing for me was the presence of the helicopters overhead, with the clouds of tear gas on the ground and the searchlights playing on the crowd.
I was scared out of my wits.
The confrontation continues as guardsmen press students back to the dormitory area.
And that's where we had the real confrontation, yelling and screaming, things flying through the air, bricks, wood, chunks of wood, bags of excrement.
There was no violence that was greater than the need that I saw. Whenever someone was resisting heavily, our attempts to get them into their dorms, they were forcibly pushed into their dorms.
But there were some guardsmen who actually picked up stones and were throwing them through the windows of the dormitory at students who were taunting them.
By 11:40 p.m., the crowd has been dispersed. 3 students and 1 guardsman are treated for injuries. At least 1 student is stabbed by a guardsman's bayonet. 51 arrests are made that night, mostly for curfew violations. The number of arrests since Friday night now total over 100.
That, I think, was a crucial turning point, because I think by Monday, it was clear that Vietnam had receded, that Cambodia was not the issue. It was the Guards' occupation of the Kent State campus.